there is a
What
level.
sucks is I actually know like all the words to that song. So every time I say it, it just starts playing in my head. Like,
Yep.
Welcome to Music Musing. Every once in a while, my brother George and I would have these conversations about music. Music is our passion, and it's a huge part of our lives, and we decided to share those conversations with you. So if you love music, sit back and enjoy this podcast.
okay, welcome back to Music Musing. Got my brother on the line.
How we doing?
Good. I'm going to read a definition. I'm going to start our podcast with a definition. Are you ready?
Oh, I did do that too. I read it earlier, but go ahead.
Okay. This is Wikipedia. This is not really a definition because the definition I found on like
I read like
Dictionary.com.
3 different versions. They were all pretty close. So
okay.
Yeah.
Rock music is a broad genre. Broad, it says, of popular music that oriented as rock and roll in the United States in the early 50s and developed into a range of different styles in the 60s and later, particularly in the United States and United Kingdom. It has its roots in 40s and 50s rock and roll, a style which drew heavily from the genres of blues, rhythm and blues, and from country music.
yes.
Sorry.
No,
Rock music also drew strongly from rock music also drew strongly from a number of other genres such as electric blues and folk, and incorporated folk, keep that in mind, and incorporated influences from jazz, classical, and other musical styles. Musically, rock is centered on the electric guitar. We've had that conversation. Usually as a part of a rock group with electric bass, drums, and one or more singers. Usually rock is song-based music with a 4/4 time signature, 4 on the floor, I always say that, using a verse-chorus form, but the genre has become extremely diverse. Like pop music, lyrics often stress romantic love. I must have glossed over this part. Like pop music, lyrics often stress romantic love, but also address a wide variety of other themes that frequent social political. So, okay, we as we
None
always
of
do,
that matters.
well, as we always do, we have conversations about music. That's why we created this podcast, because we wanted to share those conversations with you.
Correct.
Just like it says in the title.
Yes.
Out there.
And to preface all of it with, it is all our opinion, and send us yours.
No, that's my opinion's the only one that matters from what I understand.
Ours, we're snobs anyway. Music snobs.
musicmusingfeedback@gmail.com. Send it to us. We appreciate you listening to us and leaving reviews, but we want to interact with people, and this is going to be a good one for it.
Let us know what you think.
So this started with me calling you, like I do, and asking you about a song that we both love. I know we both love, because we grew up with it, and it's just a damn good song anyways.
Yeah.
Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Is that rock and roll?
No.
Right? And we kind of came to that conclusion. And then I said, Baker Street by
Jerry Rafferty. Yes.
And this is where we stopped.
And it crashed.
This is where we stopped because so I got covered by Foo Fighters not too long. Well, it's been quite a while now that I got covered, and that is rock. It's still rock, but it's interesting because one of the other definitions I read that rock really started with saxophone and piano being the lead, and it kind of changed over to guitar.
Right.
And we've discussed that in a couple podcasts as well. You know, what leads it, and even did a what if and what if drummers did, but what's rock? I mean, okay, let's go the opposite direction. There's no questioning when you say rock and roll that bands like AC/DC, Rush, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, newer bands like Greta Van Fleet, Highly Suspect, those are rock bands. It's hard to deny.
True.
What when you hear rock, you know it's rock. Today we're talking about that area that's gray that I don't think is rock. I mean,
songs or bands or that encompass that. Is that really? It's just like Baker Street is. You couldn't have picked a better example.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that song is rock. I mean, when you start singing the verses in Baker Street, it's almost like slow disco, and it doesn't pick up enough in the chorus for me to be considered rock and
What
roll.
about the guitar solo at the end? What about that?
Is it a guitar solo or is it actually a saxophone solo?
No, it's guitar.
But that still doesn't drag it into what I call the genre of rock and roll, or what I think of, or even what I read. I don't.
Okay. See, what I got out of this was the further away you get from ground zero, the harder something is to define. Meaning, if they considered Elvis the king of rock and roll, there's in 2000, that was in the early 50s, to use Wikipedia's definition.
Which is early 50s, what it calls it, yeah.
So in 2000 and just shy of 20, I mean, we are 20 years into a new millennia, 70 years past the crowning of the king of rock and roll, so to speak. I think there are so many avenues, and I think it's an unfair description anymore. I think anybody can do, because there are, now everybody that's listening, hear me, because I'm only going to say this once. There are country songs that are very heavy rock influenced. There are numerous lighter, poppier bands that do heavier songs. There are artists that, when they want to kind of throw people a curve, they rock it up, so to speak. So
Beastie Boys, and probably even like to Britney Spears I'm talking, there's such a wide swath at this. No, seriously, I don't think you're allowed to say Britney Spears in a podcast about what's rock and roll.
But
I'm muting you. You're going on mute.
I think it has to be addressed that there is such a variety of rock, because look at Jeff Young. Look what Jeff Young is doing. He played for Megadeth, and he is so far removed. His stuff is,
I don't know,
so eccentric. Well, but I mean, it's different. And
it is. And I actually wouldn't consider that rock either.
Right.
But so I get what you're saying. And we had a podcast about genres, and we talked about the different genres, and it was a really fun episode. If you guys want to go back and listen to it, it's really fun. And I know that there are areas that you put X rock, country, Southern rock,
right,
pop rock,
right,
punk rock. You can put something in front of them, and I'm not looking for the anomalies though. I'm looking for what's that line that makes a band a rock and roll band.
I know it's undefined. I think it's undefinable.
But I think it's noticeable.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, people can do rock and do it well that aren't in that genre. Change my mind.
So, no, I'm not. I'm not. Look. We're not going to argue about. Again, the standouts are going to be what's rock. I mean, AC/DC is rock. Nobody's going to argue that. Metallica is rock. Nobody's going to argue that.
Sure.
Anthrax. You can pick all the bands that we've either talked about or listened to. Guns N' Roses.
Right.
Rush. Every band that we can name that is going to be considered a rock band across the line. Like, they may have had experimental albums like The Elders by Kiss.
Right.
But Kiss is still a rock band. They're a rock and roll band.
Right. But I'm talking about the grayer side, like Robert Palmer doing, I'm sorry, but it was on my list of the best songs, like top rock songs ever. Addicted to Love is a rock and roll song.
But I don't think he's a rock and roll musician.
I don't either.
At all.
I don't either.
Okay. So we're separating the two then. We're going to separate standouts because, for me, I always go back to this occasionally, but, Sugar Ray had a song called Mean Machine.
Oh, yeah.
That song is a rock song.
It's almost a metal song, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost a metal song, but if you listen to everything on the album and post, they're not a rock and roll band.
No, they're pop, yeah.
They're pop.
Yeah.
But so do we get to give them rock and roll status because of a song?
That's what this whole argument. No, exactly. Bands like No Doubt. They had a song called Ex-Girlfriend. They started out as basically a punk band.
Well, and if you go back to Beastie Boys, though, they did start out as a punk band.
Right.
They were a 3-piece punk band.
But their bread and butter is in pop and bubblegum garbage. That's what they got famous
No
for.
Doubt?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Not.
I was like, what?
Not the Beastie Boys.
I'm sorry,
Ghostwriter. My bad.
We're on the wrong conversation.
Yeah, that's totally my bad. I changed gears without moving the lever.
So let's step back then. We're not going to call a band a rock band because they made one rock song. You talk about
absolutely not.
Robert Palmer.
Sure.
Addicted to Love is
a rock and roll song.
Yeah, it's a rock and roll song.
Listen
close.
to it again. It's a rock and roll song.
It's close enough to where I'll give it to you.
Oh,
but
well,
we're not going to tag that band as a rock and roll band because they did one good rock song.
Absolutely not.
But the other way around, we're also not going to disqualify a rock and roll band because they did Beth or because they
Jack.
Yeah, the Jack. Or actually, that's about the slowest one they got.
I think it probably is, yeah.
But I agree. I don't think so. So then how do we define, are we just defining rock and roll by a song? Or are we actually, because, the definition online says it's a genre of music. I think it's also a lifestyle. I think once you get past it being a genre because it's rock and roll, it's not just the song or just the band or just the album. It is how they present that themselves and the music.
I would have to fight tooth and nail to say it's borderline undefinable, because you could pigeonhole. Apparently, you could pigeonhole Elvis as the king of rock and roll, but 90% of his collection was either gospel or disco.
Yeah.
Coming into disco.
So I would say that you're the king, whatever. It kind of gets shortened to the king. I don't think he's a rock and roll musician. I don't
either.
And I think very few of his songs are rock and roll songs. But if you listen to what it was at the time, it was ahead of what was there.
You're making my argument for me, because I said the further away we get from that, the harder it is to define. Because the king of pop had one of the best. With even a objective third party, Pete Pardo chimed in. Beat It is one of the heavier rock songs with a great guitar. I mean, Eddie Van Halen played guitar on it. Beat It is a rock and roll song from the king of pop. No, he's not a rock and roll artist. He's not even a king of any. He's the king of pop, supposedly. But do we consider bands like U2? Do we consider them rock and roll bands because they're melodic and whiny and political? And REM, do we consider those bands? Are those rock and roll bands?
Okay, so now you're digging into something. Let's talk about that. Do we get to, let's separate the two. We've decided that we can tell what a rock and roll song is.
Sure.
I don't think Jerry Rafferty's song is a rock and roll song. You might, but I don't. At the time frame that it came out, there were too many bands doing rock and roll songs that I don't think
he had Steelers Wheels cred, though. I mean, Jerry Rafferty, I think.
Yeah, but let's go towards the bands. Let's talk about the bands. So is it their history? Like the biggest chunk of their history has to be rock for them to be a rock and roll band?
Well, obviously U2 is sold and REM is sold in the rock section. If you still go that route. That's
where I was going to go with this go ahead.
So are the Eagles.
They're not.
Yes, they are.
Way they're considered. No way they're considered rock and roll.
All right.
There is I gotta look this up. There is absolutely no way they're considered rock and roll.
All right.
You keep talking because I'm gonna prove you wrong.
All right. Well, you can prove me wrong, but they sell them under rock and roll because, I mean, they've those shoes. They had a lot of quality rock songs.
They're American rock bands. Seriously?
Oh, imagine that. Yeah, look, I was right. But
no.
But see, there again, that definition gets blurred because your initial definition said influenced by blues and country.
But influenced by
Right.
doesn't make it rock and roll, though.
But it does, because they are influenced by country and use it fluently
Well, hold on.
and
That's what I'm
considered an
saying.
American rock band.
Whether they're influenced by it or not, what they put out doesn't make them rock and roll. I don't think that it. So if AC/DC was influenced by ABBA, and I'm just totally, this is not true, but it doesn't make them a disco band.
Well, let's say Kiss, because they did a disco album. So let's say they were influenced by.
But again, that all comes back to that whole wealth of their what they've done. That most 99% of their albums are rock albums, like rock and roll albums. Like when you put a Kiss album on, every song that, well, take that out.
Easy.
Every song
Tread
that's
lightly.
going to be on there.
There is a level.
What sucks is I actually know like all the words to that song. So every time I say it, it just starts playing in my head. Like,
yep.
Damn, I don't want to hear that song anymore. That's what I consider a rock band, is when you can look at their whole
their body of
catalog,
work. Exactly,
and see multiple rock songs. The Eagles, I would never put rock and roll band on the Eagles. I don't care what it says on their Wikipedia page or where their albums are put. They are not a rock and roll band.
But you put REM in a rock category, but not the Eagles. Why?
I didn't say I put REM in.
Okay, you put U2 in a rock category, not the Eagles. Why?
I think they've had enough rock songs on their albums. So the problem with them is their popular stuff is
pop.
The stuff that's actually on their album that's good is, as far as I'm concerned, is rock. I mean, there's some really heavy stuff on some of their albums that just gets overlooked. And
Sunday Bloody Sunday was the only thing they ever did that I would give credit to. But I mean, they've got some they've got some catchy songs. They're not a rock band. I don't think U2 is a rock band. I think they're pop rock or alt rock at best.
Hold on now. Now is where I wrote this down as the last part of my conversation.
Right, you're not going to do quick subgenres, I know, but
I wrote that down as like the last part to talk about was, do we give them a pass because they are Southern rock or pop rock or punk rock? Some people don't consider punk a rock and roll band because it's a completely different feel and genre to it. I do. Yeah. I consider everything punk,
three
that
chords.
So do they get a pass because it has something in front of it?
No.
Because when I'm looking at, I'm still looking at Eagles. So the genre that they start off with is rock, but they also have them in country rock, soft rock, and folk rock.
Sure.
What is folk rock? Oh my gosh, that's like a misnomer.
What is the common denominator?
I know, but that's what I said. Maybe we need to start like revoking their rock license.
I agree.
Like you can't put.
I'm consciously making an argument for something that I'm agreeing with you just for the argument's sake. It's because the common denominator is rock and roll, because if they do enough rock songs, we consider them rock.
Okay, so why then is the Eagles considered rock?
Why is U2 considered rock? Why is REM
I think they have a
rock?
lot. I think U2 has a lot more rock songs than Eagles ever had that were rock.
You think? Think about by comparison in the late 70s. What was going on? What was going on in rock and roll? Nothing.
Hold on,
disco.
Are we on REM or U2? Which
no,
one
I'm talking the Eagles. What was?
No, I know who are we comparing them to?
To rock and roll. What was going? You compared Elvis to rock. To Elvis, by comparison, was the king of rock and roll. So the Eagles.
So years active 71 to 80.
Okay,
and then broke up, and then 94.
What was
71 to 80?
On in
Sabbath,
71
Kiss,
to 80?
AC/DC. Come on, man.
Really?
That's not even close. Yeah, that's not even close.
But in the late 70s, what was going on?
I just named them.
No,
even Def Leppard.
But I disagree. I mean,
Motley Crue.
I think by comparison, the Eagles had enough rock radio airplay, because that's all they get played. They don't get played on country stations.
Oh, well, no, that's not true because Desperado gets played on country station.
Yeah, when it's covered by somebody else, by everybody else, because it's a go-to. But all I'm saying,
curveball.
Okay, go ahead.
You just made me think of one. Or Elton John.
Negative.
Saturday Night.
Right, one song.
Well, okay, so now we're back to there's no way the Eagles are a rock band then.
The Eagles had more than one rock song, dude.
What? Give me two.
Okay, well, what is U2? How many does U2 have?
Well, they had the one off the Batman soundtrack that I can never remember what the order is.
Okay, I could never even tell you that. I didn't even know they put a song on the Batman soundtrack, but I'm just telling you. How many rock songs does REM have? Losing My Religion might be considered there. Orange Crush?
What's the frequency, Kenneth?
Orange Crush, maybe?
End of the World as We Know It.
That's not a rock song, dude.
It is a rock song.
No, it's not. Oh, my goodness.
If you're going to compare the Eagles at their time frame, that was a rock song during that time frame.
In the early 90s, that is as
probably the end of the 80s, wasn't it?
Early 90s at best, but
really?
Yeah, that End of the World as We Know It is as pop as it gets. I'd say 91, 2, or 3.
They started in 80, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I know, with Orange Crush, but they're a college band. But
Orange Crush is a decent rock song.
No, that's what I said. That maybe, but when did End of the World? Yeah,
that's what I'm looking at.
Because that's the type of stuff that I'd like to see what subgenre of rock that is. Bubblegum rock? I don't know, because I would consider them right up there with Britney Spears. You know, it's Britney, bitch. Whatever that. I mean, she's got songs that are heavier than that.
Dude, don't say things like that.
I'm just telling you.
Man. God, End of the World was... That can't be right. Oh, other recordings of this song. I was like, 97 sounds way too late for that song.
Yeah.
It was released in 87.
Really?
Yes.
I thought it was early 90s. Late 80s, early 90s is
but that's what I'm saying, is if we're going to put Eagles against their local, REM was a pretty rocking band if you put them up against what was going on in 78. Or 87, I mean.
Are you kidding me? What about like Ride the Lightning came out in like 87? You're talking rock and...
You're making my argument for me.
Right. So that's what I mean. If you're comparing apples and oranges or REM and Metallica, I mean, there is no comparison. So that's what I said. I think the further away you get from Elvis, the harder it is to actually define without a subgenre.
So what does that mean to music? Is that the reason that we can't get good rock bands today, is because they've tagged rock onto everything?
Yeah. I mean, hugely.
So here's my updated question for you. We talked about the Eagles, we talked about REM, we talked about U2. Imagine Dragons.
No.
Well,
techno
they're on the rock station all the time.
I know that. It's techno pop at best.
But it's still defined as rock. So that's
sure.
That's what I'm saying. What does this mean for the bigger picture?
So is Kid Rock.
Right.
And he's more rap or country than, I mean, he's got a couple hard rock, heavy metal songs. Like Jackson, Mississippi I love, but dude is all over the place. Do we give him a pass as a rock and roll artist because of his lifestyle, because of his couple songs he's got that are good, that aren't rap or aren't country?
I don't know about a couple, man. If you think of the stuff he had in the 90s.
That was
late
rap.
90s.
That was like new metal. Like
dude, Ball with a Ball was...
That's like Limp Bizkit style and Korn, dude. That's like new metal.
And that's rock though, right?
I guess that's what I said. Without a subgenre. Well, Metallica is more metal than rock and roll, I would say.
Now we're really going to start throwing monkey wrenches at stuff. So is Sepultura rock?
No, it's metal.
But it's still rock and roll though, right?
No, I wouldn't consider it rock and roll. It's a completely different sound, just like punk is.
The Eagles? I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the Eagles and Sepultura. Let's do that mashup. Which is closer to rock? Yeah, I mean,
You're not gonna. That's if you argue with me on that one. Then you're wrong,
obviously not.
Because Sepultura is way closer to rock than the Eagles.
Absolutely. But I said the further away you get from Elvis, the harder it is to define it without a subgenre. Metal, rock and roll metal, heavy metal. Even with like the Black Sabbath, Iron Maidens in the late 70s, early 80s that were establishing, even early 80s Metallica. There was a heavy metal, rock and heavy metal, heavy rock and roll that, because I mean, and in the 80s, those bands were more underground. The heavier bands were not getting radio play. So rock radio had to play things like Huey Lewis and the News in the early to late 80s were huge. I think he's got a couple great rock and roll songs. They're considered a rock band.
But does that make them rock because the harder rock wasn't mainstream enough? No,
I think it has to be considered. The Eagles are considered rock, so why wouldn't Huey Lewis?
No, you're considering the Eagles rock. I am not.
Huey Lewis is pop rock. I mean, but he's got some heavier songs. Walking on a Thin Line. I mean, he had some great songs that were actually rock songs.
Was that one he did the Ghostbusters theme or something? Didn't he do that?
Yeah, I Want a New Drug. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was some sort of lawsuit involved. I don't want to be kin to that, but there are bands like that are to me that were considered fringe bands that have to be at least considered in this conversation, which obviously they are.
Okay. So let's turn that now to the other genres. So I asked you earlier if maybe that's what's wrong with music today, rock music today, is we've just diluted it so much that pretty much anybody can can dip into it.
Exactly.
Have the other genres done that as well? Can you get into country music with doing mostly rock? Like, can REM be a country music fan or band if they create an album that's mostly country? And I'm saying this for a reason. Can Kanye West be considered a gospel singer if he makes one album that's a gospel album? So seriously, think of the other genres. Has country really changed? Is there a pop country? Is there a punk country? Well,
absolutely.
Pop country. I'll give you a bad example.
Rap country, whatever.
There's not a rap country. Dude,
this
stop.
new stuff.
Seriously, stop.
There is rapping in it.
Said stop.
I'm not going to make that the conjunction or whatever, but
I'm going to mute you again if you don't
go
stop.
ahead.
There's no such thing as pop country. Rap country. Stop it.
Okay.
No, seriously though. I mean, I haven't heard it. I don't know. I really don't.
I don't listen to it either, but I hear people, it's old country. This new stuff is crap because it's
no. I meant rap country. I don't know if you're right or not. I've never heard it. So
again, I don't think it's possible to put that aside. Like,
but that's what I'm saying. Is that though the problem with what we're experiencing, what you and I and even Pete have talked about?
Yeah, blurred lines. Yeah,
that it's blurring it so much that we can't get good rock because everybody wants to be considered in the rock genre.
Well, I think everybody wants to be. I think it's watered down to the point of just popularity now. They don't care how they get it or what they make.
But why rock? Well, the other genres haven't done that.
Because
country hasn't done that.
Because it's easier. I'm sorry, but it's easier.
Yeah, you're right.
12-bar blues and 4/4 and pretty much anybody can do it. Unless,
why was it so big for so long?
Because I said the further away, the technology, the capabilities, the production, the auto-tune, anybody can do it. You and I could start a band being in different states. I could record, send it to you digitally. I could sing through an auto-tuner and you could mix it and it would sound like a professional band. And we could, have a drum kit or a drum machine, and I would have no instrument, play no instruments, and couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. And you and I could have a band and be popular for at least 5 to 7 minutes on YouTube.
So I'm going to say it one last time then. Rock is dead.
Yes.
Oh, I thought we were disagreeing about that.
No.
Oh.
I think our definition of rock is dead. The music is, you can't kill music. Music is something that's fluid, that doesn't have a beginning or an end. It doesn't have since biblical times, there's been, worship,
That's true.
singing, and so on and so
Good
forth.
point.
So there's not a possible way to stop it from happening. So it's infinite in and of itself. So I think our definition of, we would like to see someone blow the doors off the rock and roll genre, like AC/DC or like Led Zeppelin or like, pick your favorite rock band, because bands like in the 80s and 90s, that like the Cult, that really, to me, are still those rock and roll bands that still put
Helmet.
Exactly. There are bands that still stand out. I've been
Soundgarden. Jam.
Clutch is big now.
Clutch.
Like that's a huge.
Been a Clutch fan for a while, but yes.
Yeah, but I mean, they're playing rock and roll. They deviate slightly here and there. They add different, they add a harmonica here, or they'll add different things, but they're playing, like you like to call it, 4 on the floor, 12 bar rock and roll. And that's it. And that's what it really, we talked about rock anthems last time and so on and so forth. There's no way to technically define it. It just, it when you hear it. So it's almost, it's just, you can put a definition to it, but if you hear it, and I don't think there's a way to, it's like trying to describe, how far east is from west. You can't do it. It's this fluidity that you cannot encapsulate to the point of pigeonholing it to just one sound. Because when I hear, like the song Alive by POD, that song is a rock and roll song. When I hear Firewoman Come On by the Cult, it's a rock and roll song. When I hear a Whole Lot of Rosie, that's a rock and roll song, period. You're never get an argument from anybody anybody that likes rock and roll is immediately going to spin the volume, as loud as it goes.
So,
and
go ahead.
No,
finish.
I wasn't trying to make a point that I don't think that there's a way to make it where you can tell somebody what rock and roll is. You kind of have to let them feel it.
Okay. That's a good springboard point right there. That last point. I mean, you made a lot of good points, but that last point is a really good one. So if I want to describe rock and roll to someone who has come from they're a time machine, they've come from 1850 to now. And I want to describe what rock and roll is. Or from another planet. Let's say they're from another planet. I want to describe what rock and roll is. I'm not going to pick U2. No, seriously.
Or the Eagles?
I'm not going to pick the Eagles. And I think maybe that's what more of what the look we have to take on this is.
Yeah.
Is if I have to describe rock and roll to you and hand you something that's rock and roll, I'm not going to hand you one of those bands. I'm not going to hand you. So let's even go back to the library idea. I'm not going to hand you U2's library. I might hand you, one of their songs and say it's rock and roll. But if I'm going to let you experience something, I'm going to immediately go to what's rock and roll. Motley Crue.
The beautiful part is, you would hand them a different song than I would.
True.
Than every other rock and roll fan on this planet would hand someone a different song. I'm sure there would be overlaps.
Yeah.
But everybody would have that immediate song. And I've gone over this for years. I know they flip-flopped, but if somebody asked me to do what, if you said, hey, you need to hand this guy a rock and roll song and he needs to know what rock and roll is, I would hand them Whole Lotta Rosie 100 times out of 100 by AC/DC. That's me. Now, again, that varies.
Well,
you can argue all you want, but I'm telling you.
But hold on. But on that idea, if I hand them Mean Machine, I have not handed them a rock and roll band.
I agree.
So
are you handing them a song or a band?
That's what I'm saying is so it's just like you describe anything else, just like art. You can't just hand them one piece and say, this is impressionist art. You can't just hand somebody, the main course of a meal and tell them that this is a full course meal. They have to have the appetizer. They have to have the dessert. It's all to work together. Right. If I'm going to hand somebody, now this is going to sound weird, but if I'm going to hand someone rock and roll, it is certainly not going to involve anything that has to do with U2 or REM or
the Eagles.
The Eagles or
sorry,
take your pick. As much as I like even Depeche Mode, they've got a couple good rock songs, but
yeah, sure.
I'm not going to hand that to somebody and say, here's rock and roll.
Absolutely.
Now, today's date, I could hand them a Clutch CD and say, this is rock and roll.
Sure.
Today's date, I could hand a Highly Suspect CD to someone and say, this is rock and roll.
Yeah.
Royal Blood. I could hand somebody a Royal Blood CD and say, this is rock and roll.
Right.
Going down the line, I could hand somebody a Led Zeppelin album. This is rock and roll. I could hand somebody a 10 by Pearl Jam and say, this is rock and roll.
Right.
So then do we need to break it down to every song? I mean, we've determined that there are rock bands because of their library and there are not rock bands because of their library. But could we physically, is it even capable of going through and defining? And I know it's going to be different for everybody. I'm taking that out of the equation. Is it physically possible to define each song as rock and roll or not rock and roll? I mean, can we put enough on it?
It is still 100% opinion. No matter.
God, I thought you were going to say it's still rock and roll to me. I was just like, wow, he's really going to do this, right?
Billy. No, I'm not doing it, Billy. But there again, it's got a few rock songs. Billy Joel, sure.
I know.
Not a rock and roll artist, but what are you going to do?
I'll say one interesting thing, and this ties into what I just said. Could we actually define it? One of the things it says under rock music in Wikipedia is it gives other topics, so you can click on things that are related to it.
Mm-hmm.
The second one on the list is distortion.
Yep.
One of the main reasons that I don't think the Eagles fall in the rock and roll genre is because of that. And one of the reasons I do think bands like Sepultura and Metallica do, for me, fall into rock and roll. I think we could, if we really sat down and wrote down things that define a rock and roll song, we could honestly come up with 5 or 6 things that don't define, but at least give a starting point. Like if it's less than, 100 beats a minute, if it has, less than 75% of the song is distorted guitars, if there's a drum solo, that's probably pushing it. but or if there's screaming lyrics, I think we could honestly put a bracket that would be big enough to encompass the songs that are considered rock and roll if you were going to hand someone rock and roll.
Sure. Well, I think we already have. I mean, to a great extent. Yeah. I mean, there are basics, like even just by the definition that you read to start this podcast, there's a basic working knowledge of what is rock and roll. I know it sounds intimidating, but it's not really. I mean, it still boils down to, it when you hear it. Excuse me. So it's like if somebody sets a slice of cake down in front of you, it's cake. You know what I mean? But it might be carrot cake. It might be, yellow cake. Chocolate. It might be marble. It might be chocolate, whatever. But it's still cake. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's different versions of rock and roll. Like there's different versions of cake, but it's easy to define a cake. It's flour, a couple broken eggs, and a little bit of butter and some oil and some baking time or whatever, and it's an icing. So there's a difference. They're the same, but they're different. I.e., rock and roll. It's the same, but it's different. They're all different. So there is a level of uniqueness, but there's also a level of similarities that you can put some boundaries on it. But for the most part, I mean, it's by feel, man. And that's been my biggest thing about music my whole life. It's all about feel. If it moves me, I dig it. If it doesn't, I'm anti.
I love that analogy. And the only response I have to that is the Eagles are the pumpkin pie of cake.
Well, there's your tagline.
Yeah, probably. Now that I think about it.
Listen to them shoes by the Eagles and tell me it's not a rock and roll song. That's the only one that uses distortion and uses heavy bass line. And it's that is a rock and roll song, and I'll argue as long as you want. That's
this
one singular.
This whole conversation just came out of me sitting and listening. I occasionally I'll listen back to our stuff and see, because we sometimes throw out ideas in our podcast for the next podcast, and I forget, so I'll go back and listen to them. And I went back and listened to the Rock Anthems podcast again, and I think we hit home and really hit a home run with what we talked about in the rock anthems and which songs were rock anthems. But it got me thinking, and that's why I called you the day and said, somebody even mentioned something. I don't remember if it was, I seriously doubt it was Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, but it made me think of that song and think, in growing up, that was kind of what we were unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, exposed to as rock. Like, we didn't get to hear AC/DC and Led Zeppelin when it was popular, because
fresh,
just upbringing.
Yeah,
it was upbringing.
But we did have Styx and Blondie and
right.
Styx. Oh, there's a fringe band for me.
Exactly, but they have some songs that are hard.
Absolutely, they also have songs with piano and robots in them. So
right. How many times did we listen to Mr. Roboto? Just seriously, I mean. Are we triple digits? At
least, because I can still, when I hear that, if I ever hear that song, I know where the skip is in the 45 that Mom had, and I wait for it, and it's not there.
Where it is. Dude, I even know where it
is. It's sad. It really, I mean, it messes. That scarred me. I know where the skip is in that 45, and it's sad.
The Beastie Boys, the first cassette I had a spot where it was partially blank in a spot in the song, and every time it comes around, that's it. And for years, because so we're really going off tangent, but you and you've talked about this before. We listened to 98 Rock in Tampa for years. That was like our go-to. They inserted stuff into songs, like We Built This City. They
Q105.
Obviously. Right. Oh, well, Q105 did it, but 98 Rock did some weird stuff as well.
Sure.
And when those stations would play Fight for Your Right to Party, and that Bustin' line comes out, line that comes out, I always thought that was inserted by one of the local radio stations. It's probably 10 years ago before I realized that it was actually in the album.
Do you know? Yeah. To this day, Q105 still plays this song, We Built This City on Rock and Roll by Starship, and they still insert the Q105. You can go, you can, Q105.com, you can go, you can play, find it on they actually still put that, they still play it the same way 30 years later.
I don't want, it's funny because I've been going through my old cassette tapes and transferring them over to digital, and I actually found that on there and fast forwarded past it because I didn't want to hear it.
But now there's another one real quick.
Okay.
Jefferson Airplane versus Jefferson Starship.
Yeah, and well, so
Grace Slick.
I think we're gonna keep coming back to probably the same thing. That
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of bands out there that are rock and roll bands. There's a lot of bands out there that are capable of making a rock and roll song.
Sure.
But then there's bands out there that are doing it just to get into the genre.
Yes.
And that's where I have problems with it. And you can even, as much as this can be public right now. I'm a closet Kid Rock fan. Love Kid Rock stuff. I don't think I've ever heard a song I don't like by him.
I don't hate the guy,
but he really feels like he is a country or a southern rock guy trying to do something that he shouldn't be doing.
Yes.
When I hear songs like
that one where
Jackson,
when he ripped off Warren Zevon and Leonard Skinner in the same song,
yes.
dude, lose a little bit of faith in the dude. But go ahead.
But songs like Jackson, Mississippi,
right? I want to break stuff when that song comes on. That's a badass song. Yeah.
But then I go back to, like I said, Ball with a Ball earlier.
Yeah.
And I just hate that song is out there because it's almost a catchy song, but it feels like he's just doing it just to be a catchy song, not because he wanted to be a rock song.
What about Cowboy?
Yeah, again, I it's a catchy song, but that's not what I like by him.
Right.
It's not even close to what I like by him.
Exactly.
So I think that, definitions are going to be song to song at this point.
Yeah, and
I really think they fall in those three
camps.
camps.
Long, yeah.
Yeah, but I think they fall in those three camps. You got rock and roll bands that you're never going to deny AC/DC as being a rock and roll band. You're never going to deny Guns N' Roses as being a rock and roll band. Boston. Yeah, Journey, do we never deny them? Are they?
Man.
We could spend the next 100 episodes picking 3 bands each episode and determining whether they're rock and roll bands. Do you want to do that? No, just kidding. We don't.
No. Negative Ghost Rider. That's a can of worms you would never get closed back up.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I think that falls in those 3 spots. People that we know are rock and roll, people that have the capability of making a rock song or a couple of rock songs, and then people that just don't get it. But
I think the tragic reality is the laziness of the record industry, that they made a couple good rock and roll songs and they lumped them in the rock category.
Right. And that's where I kind of was going with this is I really don't like the fact that
the disappointing
I don't
part.
know. Yeah. And I think, honestly, I really think it has diluted it's polluted the waters so much that you can't get a good rock and roll band because people's going to ask, what kind of rock is it?
Yeah.
Instead of, you get country. Nobody asks what kind of country song it is. It's country.
Right.
When you get a rock song, I'm pulling them out again, but Imagine Dragons, is it pop rock? Is it techno rock?
It's not even rock.
But that's what I'm saying.
They play them on rock radio. I know,
but that's the first question is is it? And the one I love the most is it traditional rock? Wait a minute. What the hell's traditional rock?
I already told you that. It's AC/DC, the Cult, bands like that, Led Zeppelin. Yeah, that's...
Yeah. Conversations, man, for this is just... honestly, we could go on for 3 hours and talk about this but I really think that defining rock and roll or rock music is... I think at one point in time, it could be completely defined. I think that 70s, maybe early 80s, you were a rock and roll band or you were not a rock and roll band. I think nowadays, like you said, we've gotten so far away from it that it's really hard to tell. But I'm so upset that it's the only genre. It feels like it's the only genre that has been treated that way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I agree. Because, pop isn't, country isn't. If
you look at rap, it's kind of evolved into hip hop.
Yeah. It's kind of, that's like, when people say old country and new country, to me, it's like,
right.
If you're rapping
country.
Everything from Sugar Hill Gang till today is considered hip hop to me or rap. It's the same difference to me, just like new and old country personally.
But even if you split those two, you've only got 2. There's really,
right.
There are some small subgenres of that type of music. but not near what there is of rock. I mean, like I said, we had a genres episode, and there was 15 or 20 we came up with. What was the funny one we came up with? That was God, I can't remember what it was.
Aztec rock or something, or Indian rock or something.
Something like that. I'm like
Pueblo rock. I don't know. It was something ridiculous.
I just feel that we've kind of got shortchanged with our music, unfortunately.
Well, I think it's like I said, I think it's because it's easier to go from, because you can have. Well, look at Ozzy did a song with this tattooed freak. Drawing a blank. He just released
those tattoos on his face.
Yeah.
I could see his face too.
Yeah.
I just saw him in an award the other day. So
yeah, and that's how important he is, because I mean, I'm sure people know, but regardless, I mean, but there again, you tap a rock metal icon,
Post Malone.
There you go. That's it. And you become famous. I mean, he was apparently some sort of rapper, but you tap rock and you're stratospheric instantaneously. He's played on a rock station. His face is known to, and I think because rock has the biggest draw and always has. Look at some of these metal festivals and rock festivals in Europe. Hundreds and thousands of people at these festivals.
I got to say the other genres are really starting to catch up. I think 80s and 90s,
at this point, yeah.
80s and 90s, I would say that there was, you couldn't.
Garth Brooks is the closest thing country had to a stadium star.
I don't think you could double most of the concerts out there that weren't rock, of the people that were in it, and hit some of the rock numbers that they were getting in those stadiums and concerts.
Absolutely not. That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, as much of a debacle as it was that re-imaging of Woodstock in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
What other genre can have a 3-day concert?
Right. Exactly.
Ooh, livestock.
Yeah, right.
Nice going back.
Let's not do that either.
No, let's not do that.
But yeah, no, I agree. I think rock is where everybody wants to be, is because it's where the cool kids are. You know, I hate to put it like in lame terms like that, but it's like, because I mean, country stars, if they want to be somehow noticed in a realm where they're not looked at as, you know, just another artist, they go to rock. Same with this Malone kid. You want to get noticed, you tap Ozzy. I think there's that, it still has the draw. It still has the draw, because nobody, I mean, I'm sure there are, but there's how many like rap or hip hop anthems are there? How many, you know, country anthems are there that as soon as it starts, you know it, and you just want to pump your fist, and everybody's.
Hold on. You almost have to preface that with past 2005, because there's some stuff from the 80s and 90s that still like sticks out, like Gin and Juice. Jump Around. There's still some. I'd almost say that's a rock song.
Yeah, I would consider House of Pain a rock band.
Anyways, but there are definitely some rap songs and hip hop songs from the 80s and 90s, that are going to be something that people are going to recognize right away. So I would say past 2005, you're right. I can't think of anything that stands out, and it's not because I don't listen to it, but because I'm in music all the time, so I hear songs regardless. But I would say the past 2005, there's probably nothing that sticks out. You're right.
Yeah. Anyway.
So we have laid down the definition.
Yeah. Well, at least laid down a gauntlet anyway.
Yeah. People yell at us though. We do have though. I think we're going to have another album challenge.
Yes.
Have you got your list yet?
No, I'm trying to decide if I want it to be regular, or I want it to be something like that you wouldn't listen to, but you might actually enjoy.
I'm just gonna go with Cardi B and just let you.
I don't even know what that is, but does it have to be one that we listen to regularly?
Yeah, I would prefer because
Okay,
I think
if you listen to Cardi B regularly, we're gonna have to have another talk off the air because that's a different.
No, don't put that in my mind because that's not.
Because I'll drop Britney Spears. I'll drop Britney, bitch.
Hold on now. Between those two, I'll certainly take Britney Spears over Cardi B at this point.
I wouldn't even know Cardi B if I seen her on the street. But anyway,
you know, it's funny because I looked up Post Malone, like we were just talking about it, and below it has, you know, people that looked up Post Malone looked up these people, and Cardi B was one of them. And I pull it up, and the first article that I get from her is Cardi B chows down in a sexy bikini after twerking with strippers in Lagos. But is that a rock headline or is that a rap headline?
I guarantee there's. I would bet a paycheck on. There's nothing I care less about on this planet than that.
You're right. Anyways, so we'll be back with Rock Challenge in a couple of weeks, and I think we've tied up rock and roll bands for this episode. And,
you know, send us your suggestions too. That musicmusingfeedback@gmail.com. Send us suggestions for the album challenge too. That might be cool twist.
Yeah, what a great idea. Yes. I actually put something up on Twitter, and this is kind of date the podcast, unfortunately, but if you leave us a review on your favorite platform, you take a screenshot and you send me a direct message on Twitter, which is musicmusing_, @musicmusing_. We'll send you guys a sticker. I'll try and get them out before the holidays. It's going to be close at this point, but definitely leave us a review, but also send us some email and give us some suggestions on the album challenge. Try and keep it in the rock genre. It'd be nice. And then, yeah, maybe we can get something off that. It's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, brother. We'll probably catch up to you in the next couple weeks.
All right. We'll be here.
Yep. Have a go, man.
All right. See ya.
That's it.
We want to talk to you about music, so reach out to us at musicmusingfeedback@gmail.com.
You can also find us on most social media sites by searching Music Musing or George or Craig Seibert, SYBERT.
And you can also find us on Twitter as musicmusing_ as well.
Thank you for listening to this Music Musing podcast.